In Formula One, when observing Ferrari, part of what we had predicted in their approach to this weekend has materialized. The Italian side sought an acceptable compromise between the Red Bull Ring's contrasting characteristics, the first sector being stop and go, and the second featuring fast, flowing corners. If we look at the gaps in the three sectors, they are quite similar. This means that for now, the compromise they aimed for has been achieved. Ferrari was not chasing lap times, but rather studying new floor. Naturally, all the limitations came to light. Overall, instability could be seen in corners like 6 and 7, while in the braking zones of turns 3 and 4, approaching the apex, the rear end tended to lighten up. Generally speaking, the SF25 showed a setup that was overly ambitious on this track. This first Friday was particularly important given the new floor that was introduced. The new specification features revised fences at its leading edge, an updated barge board, and several changes to the diffuser volume. This evolution was fitted to both of the team's cars. At this stage, we can't give a definitive verdict, especially since the team needs time to understand how to get the most out of the update and to fine-tune the setup accordingly. Speaking of tires, no major issues emerged in activation. Although there were some problems with overheating, it is possible that Ferrari did not quite hit the correct operating window, a necessary step forward to do better tomorrow. This could help recover some ground in cornering, as minimum speeds at the apex are currently not on par with direct competitors. Additionally, it seems that the fuel load used by Ferrari was higher than that of their rivals. The same goes for the engine mapping, which was less aggressive compared to McLaren and Red Bull. Fred Vasseur himself confirmed this in his analysis. We now await today's sessions, keeping in mind that the Maranello team could already make progress in the third free practice session at the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg. From what we saw on the first day of track action in Austria, the fight for pole position seems to be between the McLaren drivers. However, one must consider the usual step forward Red Bull tends to make between Friday and Saturday. Moreover, Max Verstappen's first practice session was, overall, more positive than usual, although there were still several issues that need serious work. Max Verstappen complained a lot about understeer. There was a notable lack of rotation at mid-corner, a clear issue in both sessions. Increasing front downforce did not work. The RB21 single-seater has a problem with the front axle because in the section from turn 6 to turn 10, Max Verstappen did not have a good feeling with the front end. In this kind of corner, the front axle is heavily loaded on entry. The Milton Keynes team also brought a floor update. The solution worked and will be retained for tomorrow. McLaren arrived in Austria as the favorite and has so far easily dominated its rivals. As we can see in the telemetry data, the real gap to Red Bull is about 0.2. On circuits where a strong compromise is required, the MCL39 adapts very easily. It generates a lot of downforce and in high-speed corners is able to maintain excellent minimum speeds. Unlike Ferrari, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri had no corrections on the steering wheel, a sign that they immediately found the perfect balance during this first day of running. Even in the more technical sections, the two MCL39 cars did not show any kind of deficit. The advantage in all sectors is very solid, although in Sector 1, Red Bull manages to get quite close to the papaya-colored cars. It was therefore a more chaotic Friday than expected for the Maranello team, and one which prevented Ferrari from fully assessing its potential at the Spielberg circuit. FP1 complicated the team's plans, with Charles Leclerc sidelined and his car was entrusted to Dino Beganovic, while Lewis Hamilton was plagued by gearbox problems that eventually forced the team to replace the entire transmission before FP2. The work program was therefore condensed into the afternoon session, which provided the first feedback on the new floor introduced in Austria. In the qualifying simulation, Charles Leclerc placed 5th in a timesheet open to various interpretations. He was behind Lance Stroll, but ahead of George Russell. The most significant figure was the 0.3 gap to Max Verstappen and the more than half a second that separated him from leader Norris by the end of the day. These are substantial gaps, but equally important will be the work Ferrari's engineers carry out before FP3 after analyzing the initial data from the new floor. Team principal Frederic Vasseur expressed his belief, or at least his hope, that McLaren had been running with a low fuel load, as they typically do in FP2 and FP3. He stated that Ferrari had followed their usual program and would calmly analyze the data in the evening, noting that it was the first time the team had used the new floor. He added that they had conducted comparative tests between the two cars and would evaluate the results that night in order to make the necessary decisions for the following day. An encouraging sign came from the race simulations completed in FP2. Charles Leclerc's pace on medium tires was the fourth fastest overall, behind the McLaren duo and the Mercedes of Kimi Antonelli. Lewis Hamilton, running on softs, also completed a fairly fast run, recording the fifth best simulation despite only doing 6 laps. Charles Leclerc explained that he had gotten into the car for the first time during the second session and immediately felt comfortable, though he admitted he was not yet fully satisfied with the overall feeling. The Monegasque driver noted that, as usual, the race pace looked strong, but the Maranello team needed to improve in terms of qualifying trim in order to secure better starting positions and be able to fight at the front on Sunday. For Lewis Hamilton, Friday turned out to be more complicated than expected. The 7-time Formula One world champion revealed that a gearbox issue during the first free practice session cost the team some time and set them back slightly. Although the second session went better, he acknowledged that they were still not where they wanted to be in terms of pace, and emphasized that more work was needed. The Briton added that the team would continue working on the setup overnight. Meanwhile, speculation about Frederic Vasseur's future as Ferrari team principal remained a topic of discussion in the paddock. The rumors were far from ideal for the team, but Frederic Vasseur made it clear that there was a strong internal determination not to be distracted by external noise. The French manager underlined the importance of staying focused during a race weekend and stressed that teamwork was essential, something he believed the team was managing well so far. The first day of activity is behind us for the 10 teams and 20 official drivers. While McLaren continues to confirm its strength, the others have had work to do to catch up. On the Maranello side, the second free practice session showed two sides: a good race simulation pace, but also plenty of work to do for the qualifying session at the Red Bull Ring. We will now have to discover how the Ferrari engineers and technicians have worked overnight from Friday to Saturday. Many hours in the simulator for Zhou Guanyu, who in Maranello had the challenging and crucial task of testing various setups for the weekend. The job of Ferrari's third driver was to compare the track data with the simulator data gathered before the first free practice session for the Austrian Grand Prix. A meticulous task requiring great focus and calibration in order to extract as much data as possible and obtain a clearer picture of the situation for the rest of the weekend. While the car performed well in the race simulation, with a pace quite close to that of the two MCL39 cars, the qualifying outlook was worrying due to the gap. The goal is clearly to find the right compromise without jeopardizing the strong race pace shown in the second free practice session.